Hi everyone, welcome to another interesting episode with I'm Food Venturist. This is a very interesting and special episode for me because a good friend of mine, Tarun Mahadevan, is here with us today. And today we will be discussing at great length in terms of the food industry per se, more insights into the bakery and the challenging aspects of running a food business here in this part of the world. So thank you so much for agreeing to come be a part of us, Tarun. Really
Pleasure to be here, Ali sir, and thank you for having me.
No worries at
I
all.
often tell people I don't know why I get invited to these events to talk, because I'm either the youngest or the most the most inexperienced at these events. But I guess there are some privileges that come with working with Advantage Foods, and I think a privilege that the legacy that my father has built over the past couple of years. So 100%.
Absolutely. So Tarun, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you have done in your school?
Great.
Too early to talk about school, or is it like college?
It's school's now around 10 years back, sir. So yeah,
back.
so it feels like a long time ago. So I did my schooling in Chennai, Lady Andal.
Great.
Passed out of there, went and did my BSc honors in business administration and finance at the University of Bath.
Okay.
After finishing there, I did an internship with an investment services company there.
Okay.
And after that, I switched over to a private equity fund. I was working with a private equity fund for a while there. I was really enjoying it. Net goal was to always come back to India and do something. 2018 தமிழ்ல பேசலாம். Okay, super. 2018 வந்து my dad came up with an interesting opportunity to actually there was an investment company that we had, a company that we had which had private equity investment, and he said, why don't we look at buying back half of that company and running it. So at that juncture of my life, I said, okay, fine, I'm young enough to come and experiment on this and see if I like it. So I said, okay. So 2018, I joined the business, and I've been with Advantage Foods now for the past 6 years, from 2008 to 2024. I think that the learning so far has been great. We had COVID, which was a huge seasonal block week. Madri solvang. That was a very big block week for me. So huge learnings. And I think that right now, where the company is positioned and where I'm positioned in the company as well, it's very interesting times going ahead, considering how India has evolved over the past couple of years. And more than how India has evolved, how the food and beverage industry in India has evolved as well. Absolutely. So when I joined the company in 2018, I was a business development manager.
Okay.
I was working particularly with Writers Cafe, one of the brands that we have. Adukapram slowly started looking at the fine dine division of restaurants that we have as well. And then last that came into our portfolio was Hot Breads, a brand that's been with us for a long time, and was a JV brand, joint venture, 50-50. And we bought out our JV partners in 2020. And right now my current role is Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Advantage Foods. We are a organized F&B company based out of Tamil Nadu. We have 3 verticals: restaurants, cafes and bakeries. Cafes, like I mentioned to you before, is Writers Cafe. Bakery is Hot Breads. And our restaurant brands have a couple of brands such as Marina, Yente Kerala, Benjarong, Teppen, Chinatown. And we also do dabble in the cloud kitchen space with brands such as Malabar Point, Wafo and Phuket Street. So this is just a bit about me and the company. Yeah.
Wow, that's really comprehensive about what you've been doing and what you are doing right now. That's really great. So how has your exposure from your working abroad, and how was that inflection into the business straight away? Was it a really easy transition, or did you have time adjusting? I know you're from Chennai, so naturally you will have fundamentals of how Chennai works and everything does, but that is when you're in your school days. But for your studies and education, you went overseas, and after that you started working over there. Your exposure and experiences must have been very different from what the work scenario there is there. And when you come and work in a company based out of Chennai, how was that transition through?
Oh, I mean, the transition was hard.
Okay.
It was very hard. I think when you look at life, you can look at life as your personal life and your professional life.
Mm-hmm.
Personal life was great because I always had friends and family back home in Chennai, so that was good. But I think professional life wise, it took me a while to understand how things worked in India.
Okay.
Right? I think that you have to first learn how to work in India to work in India. Right?
Okay.
they're two very different subjects, right?
Okay.
And when I joined the company, of course, I was viewed as a small boy in the company, because a lot of the people in the company knew my father, and they said, what experience does this guy have? So I had to sort of play to my strengths, and my strengths usually have always been numbers. I was like I said, I did my BSc honors in business administration and finance particularly. I worked purely in financial services, so numbers was my strong suit. So I think that the best explanation of how I work with the companies, my father gave this best explanation. My father always says that he built the business by waiting at tables, right?
Okay.
And he says that I'm running the business by looking at Excel tables, right? So I think that's the best explanation. But of course, the transition was very difficult, more than anything culturally. Yet I had to sort of pick my battles, even with other people at the office, or even with my own father, for example. I think that was a huge relationship, because I was very clear right from day one that when I joined the company, I don't want to be viewed as the boss's son or the owner's son or anything like that. I want to be viewed as another employee.
Okay.
I wear the uniform, I wear an ID card, I adhere to all the rules and regulations. Like leave I have to put in an application.
Okay.
And all that. And I think that while that took a while, initially, I think it's helped in the long run. I think that people in the company now view me as an employee, not so much as an owner, and I think that gives me a lot more insights into the problems that the company has, the problems the brand has. And I say problems because at the end of the day, I think that most CEOs are glorified PAs, right? Because you have to have a good team of people to run the business for you. I always believe that a good idea builds a good business, but a great team builds a great business. And I think that you need to have the glorified PA role of a CEO to constantly be on the ground and make everything gel together and make everything work as a well-oiled machine, I think. Absolutely. Right? So I think that the biggest transition I had was when I moved back. It took me a while to understand how people in India work. Patience levels were almost absent. And more than anything, I think that one of the biggest things is everybody in India works hard. But I think that when we start learning also to work smart along with working hard, results are automatically, triple fold, if you ask me. So yes, transition wise, it was very difficult initially during the initial years of my time in India, and slowly learned how to work with the teams, how to work on the ground, regulatory environment, how brands work, and of course the Indian customer. The Indian customer was a big tiger to wrestle with when I came back and moved back, because understanding, and each of the brands that we ran had a different target customer, right?
Absolutely.
So I slowly started to understand. Okay, fine. While Advantage Foods is just is a company, it's a parent company, and in Advantage Foods we don't have brands. We have multiple companies. For me, if you ask me, a brand runs like its own company, and you have to run it like that. P&L cost structure will be different. Unit economics are different. Target audience is different. Branding is different. Marketing is different. Seasonality is also different. So each of these brands that we have had different ways of being run. And I think that took me the longest time to understand. It isn't a cookie cutter approach that one shoe size fits all for all the brands. And I think that transition also took me quite a while. So yeah.
Absolutely. That's quite insightful in terms of how you're running your business. And a quick question now, when you said that you have multiple brands or multiple companies running inside your company, does having a shared resource mean a better P&L for operation's sake, or how do you see that?
I always tell my entire corporate office that we are a cost to the company, we are not a profit to the company. Okay. Nobody in my corporate office, very few people in my corporate office can actually cook. Right. So I always tell them that we are a cost to the company, and it is our duty to simply be as a support to the entire company. We as a corporate office, everybody that wears a corporate uniform has to ensure that our teams on the ground who interact with our customers, who interact with our stakeholders, who interact with our suppliers, they are all well taken care of, right? And I think that shared resources amongst all, I think you have to be very careful about where you share your resources and how you share your resources, right? For example, there is always that rule that people say, 80% of your sales comes from the top 20% of your SKUs and things like that, the 80-20 rule, right? I think there you have to be very, very careful about how you're sharing resources and what resources you're allocating, right? People always focus on capital allocation. I think along with capital allocation, you also focus on resource allocation. For example, in the month of December, when our bakery and cafe business is slightly on the uptick, most resources will be allocated towards that. They will be given preference. We have a brand called Yente Kerala, which is a brand focusing on Malabar coastal Kerala cuisine. And during the month of Onam, we have only all resources in our company will be redirected just to focus on that. Why this resource allocation is important is because capital allocation plus resource allocation equals efficient capacity building, right? Now, suddenly say a restaurant is doing 100 rupees a day in sales, right? During the month of Onam, that particular restaurant, Yente Kerala, will do 300 rupees in sales. That doesn't mean that I should take my cost structure to 3x to meet that, right? Absolutely. So I think that's where efficient capital allocation, resource allocation helps us cater to the 3x capacity, right? On the days of Onam, everybody in the head office is at outlets. Everybody in the head office assumes the roles and responsibilities of outlet level staff, whether it may be waiting on tables, whether it may be clearing tables, handling guests, takeaway parcels, all that. So I think that when you're looking at sharing resources, you stressed around a very important point that resource allocation is also very, very important. And I think that many people tend to say, having one common cost structure at the head office is great. And what happens then is you have overworked people, right? Which not necessarily leads to efficiency, right? And I think that with good capital allocation, good resource allocation, you not only have great capacity building, but you also have high levels of efficiency with which you can operate a business.
Absolutely. So with what you're saying, I also do understand with this kind of, so it is like what in these modern servers, which are like in AWS and these things, depending on the load, automatically the servers will either increase the capacity or this one.
Precisely.
So you already have a fixed structure available, and depending on where the business is actually heading, the resources get auto allocated, and it is, but I think it is in the culture of your company to support that particular business in that particular time where the revenue is maximized for the benefit of the
100%. And I think that even till date, my father is the chairman of the company. Even if today he's at the outlet and he sees the outlets very busy, many times you'll see him clearing tables as well.
Absolutely.
And when you have that top-down approach, right, when you see the management taking these roles, taking these initiatives of every other staff, right, automatically that culture gets sets in. And I'm very happy that you brought up the word culture, because I think that the best form of capital in a company is culture. You focus on cultivating a strong culture in your company, and you don't have to worry about anything else, right? Once you and one of the biggest cultures I believe is that institution is bigger than individual.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think that institution should always be bigger than you. Take some of the largest institutions in the world, Unilever, Coca-Cola, right, PepsiCo, right? You think about how they've become institutions themselves. Why do we look so far? Look at Tata, right? In India, Tata is an institution, right? Today, the brand Tata, everybody respects because they know that Tata comes with a certain culture, right? And I think that that's where you really start focusing and ensuring that as long as you get culture right, you can definitely have a strong organization where whether Nalik Ninginda Latina, whoever may be the MD CEO, it may be me, maybe somebody else, the company has an individual unique characteristic, the company has an individual unique culture, and the company has its own way of operating, such that tomorrow, whether it is me running the company or you, Ali sir, running the company, or anybody running the company, it is about you blending into the company's culture, not the company's culture blending into you.
Absolutely.
Right? It is you blending into the company's culture, that you start operating, okay, this is how things are done in this company, and that's about it. So
would training be a very important part for you to, carry forward this particular culture that you're talking about?
Oh,
in great
100%,
employees?
100%. I think that, one of the biggest things that we stress to focus on is training. And when I say training, it's on the ground training,
Okay.
right? We've been trying for a long time to implement a strong buddy system, right?
Okay.
Where people who join the company, they work with somebody in the company who's already been there for a while and understands how things works, understands how to deal with customers. But again, when I say I've been trying to implement this, it's primarily because of the fact that, again, within the company, like I said earlier, there are many other companies, i.e. brands,
Okay.
right? And each brand has its own culture. Each brand has its own this thing, right? And and I think that there are certain characteristics, right? Like, for example, honesty, transparency, customer first, food safety. All these are cultures and characteristics of the company that each brand will have, right? It's not that one brand will value customer satisfaction over employee satisfaction. All brands, there will be common characteristics, but within that there will be certain intrinsic characteristics to each brand which will define the culture of that brand. So training forms a very, very important part of it. And I think that many organizations have to understand that training is imperative. There are organizations that do a great way of training. For example, a restaurant chain that I really respect called Heidi Love Hot Pot Restaurants, right? 1,800 plus hot pot restaurants across the globe, a couple of $1 billion in US revenue. And you see that way of training. Each manager, right, when he trains somebody below him, and that person who he trains becomes a manager in another restaurant, the manager gets a profit incentive from his restaurant, and also the manager gets a profit incentive from the person he trains, that guy's restaurant. Okay. And suppose that guy trains somebody else, right? That guy, the first manager who trained the second manager, gets a profit share from not only the second manager but the third manager's restaurant as well. Wow. So you have this trickle down waterfall effect, right? And you create such a strong training mechanism in the company, right? For example, in Heidi Love, they have one simple rule. Whenever anybody is going back into the kitchen, they should not go empty-handed. They should clear something. And this anybody is anybody. It can be a manager, it can be a crew, it can be a service staff, it can be anybody, right? It can be somebody even from housekeeping, but nobody is allowed to go back into the kitchen empty-handed. Right? That's a sort of training, and and there are many other organizations that have done this, but I think that, again, training goes back into that important word, culture, that you have to have a strong sense of ownership in the company, right? And I think that really reflects on a lot of other aspects.
Absolutely. And one such another organization also got training from Marriott, or was one of the QSRs?
Yeah. I'm not sure which one.
I think was it Chick-fil-A or one of these guys who got some very intensive training done for them, and I think they're doing extremely well despite the fact that they're even shut down on a Sunday. I think they are devout Christians based out of
that's
this one.
Chick-fil-A, 100%.
And Sunday is one such kind of a day, I think, where most of the restaurants really push for maximizing sales.
No, 100%.
But their belief system and whatever the way they have structured that particular program, despite working only 6 days a week, they are actually able to do 2x, 3x that of any other regular restaurant in that particular format.
100%. Chick-fil-A is a great example. They operate only 6 days a week. They believe that their employees should be given off on Sundays. Okay. The founders, yes, like you said, are very strong devout Christians, so they believe that the employees who are Christians should be able to go to church on Sunday. And I think that for other employees, it's about spending time with your family on a Sunday, right? And in spite of being closed on a Sunday in F&B, Chick-fil-A still commands one of the highest average daily sales, right? And average weekly sales and average monthly sales across all other QSR brands. And I think Chick-fil-A is one of the brands that has really done well in America. And in America, mainly being a beef-dominated industry, right? They've done extremely well there with a product like chicken, and they've actually categorized and they've really built a category for the chicken sandwich. Right?
Absolutely.
And now all other brands have started mimicking it, right? Whether it's
to mention that McDonald's and KFC already have been trying to dominate in that particular space.
Right, and they really focused on categorization within that QSR industry in the US, and I think that they're a great brand, and I think that one of the things that, of course, they do have their own shares of issues that they've dealt with and are dealing with as well. But I think that in terms of building a category, right, like a chicken sandwich, right, you should really look at how brands like Chick-fil-A have done it, 100%.
Absolutely. Now, with the progression of all the things that is happening, this particular podcast, what we are having, is going to have a very, very important relevance, because not only you are of the younger generation, but also you are of the younger generation who's actually aware of how the industry has been, how the industry is going to be, and how the industry is possibly going to be in the near future.
Yeah.
Rather, how it was, how it is, and how it possibly will be. With that in mind, I think this is going to be a very, very important podcast for many people to refer, for one simple reason: to understand or probably have a sense of direction in terms of how the industry is going. So, reflecting upon what's happening in the West, when you're talking about developed countries and this one, how do you see India adapting it? And how do you see India progressing in that particular path? Are we a different beast by ourselves, or are we mimicking what is happening in the West in terms of business and requirements and all these kind of things? What is your take on that?
See, I think that when you look at first, yes, India's a very different beast, because each state has its own economy,
Absolutely.
right? You have brands in India that they talk about localization, right? Many brands, McDonald's took a long time to build their business in India, because for them localization wasn't just to do India, it was to each state in India, right? And McDonald's, when they came to India, they understood that, okay, India has a very large vegetarian population, and they developed the McAloo Tikki. Today, at McDonald's headquarters in Chicago, which is called Hamburger University, they have a global McDonald's restaurant there, where they sell the best-selling burgers from all over the world wherever McDonald's operates. You have your Japanese teriyaki burger, and to my fortunate surprise, when I visited that outlet a couple of years ago, I saw McAloo Tikki,
Okay.
right? And a McAloo Tikki, okay, being served in America, right, at McDonald's headquarters, speaks a lot about where India is on the map today, on the global map of F&B. And I think that what happened is, whenever a trend happened in the West, you'd see that trend come into India in, say, N plus 1 or 2 years, right? That N plus 1 or 2 years over the past couple of years has been closing down. Now it's not only N plus 1 or 2, it's N plus 3 or 4 months, it's N plus 1 or 2 weeks. And that is by the advent of social media, by the advent of access to information, right? And I think that, let's just take, for example, the a trend that was viral a couple of years ago in Southeast Asia, which was the charcoal ice cream, right?
Yes.
You had many brands in India doing charcoal ice cream, right? Activated charcoal powder was being purchased, and it was being inculcated into recipes, and all that was done within very, very short spans, right? And I think that where India is headed is in a great direction, whereby even international brands like a Starbucks, okay, who know coffee, the business of coffee inside out, who know how a customer likes what a customer likes to do in a coffee shop, right? They are facing good competition. And when I say good competition, it's because the industry overall prospers when there are more organized players.
Players
right?
come into the market.
You have brands like Third Wave Coffee Roasters. You have brands like Blue Tokai doing really well, in terms of how they are able to create a equivalent, if not sometimes a better customer experience, right? And I think that one of the greatest things is that before, when I needed a refresh or a mindset change, okay, I need to go see what's next, what's happening out there in the world, I had to travel to Europe, I had to travel to Singapore, I had to travel to Dubai, I had to travel to the US, right? Now I can travel to Hyderabad, Mumbai or Delhi, or even as close as Bangalore, and get that same level of exposure, because you have amazing brands, amazing homegrown brands. And I think that even now international companies and international brands are more welcoming of the idea that, okay, fine, even if not 100% of our menu can be served in India, can we still create a product that can be served in India, right? And I think that way India is doing really well. And I think that there is a huge scope of food and beverage, right? For example, a couple of years ago, and when I say a couple of years ago, this was about in 2000 and I think, if I'm not mistaken, 15 or 16, I was reading a report that the disposable income an American spends on food and beverage, i.e. eating out, or just as food, right, is around 38%. So if an American earns 100 rupees, $100, they're going to spend $38 on just food and beverage as a spend class, right? In India, that number was 13%,
Wow.
right? Today, I am sure that number is nothing short of 30%.
Absolutely.
right? You have, and that change would have been brought about by Indian entrepreneurs who have created amazing brands in India, homegrown brands in India. It's created by Indian entrepreneurs who've built brands like Swiggy and Zomato, who have given accessibility to the Indian population, right? Today, at the whip of your phone, right, within 20 minutes, you have accessibility to more than 30, 40 different types of cuisines, okay? And all this plays a huge role in changing the F&B landscape of India. Today, the word being a pan-Asian restaurant, right? It isn't really looked as, okay, what you're trying to do. Today, you have specialized cuisines. The Indian customer understands what Malaysian cuisine is, what Singaporean cuisine is, what Thai cuisine is, right? That concept of being before, I feel you were either a Chinese restaurant or you were a pan-Asian restaurant, right? Even in Chinese restaurant today, you have pure play mainstream Chinese restaurants and you have your Indo-Chinese restaurants, right? And I think that's been done by just the Indian community as a whole. I think that every stakeholder, whether it's a customer, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether it's a restaurant operator or a food service provider, I think that change has been fantastic. And I think that really, when you deeply look at it, the F&B scene in India, right, is really going to boom. And when I say in India, it's because each state is going to contribute to a different boom of its own, right? Let's just take chai as a category, right? Today you have Chaios, you have Chai Kings, you have Chai Point, and you have multiple companies selling and focusing on one particular SKU, chai, right? Chai's existed in India for years,
Yes.
right? And these brands have done so well because they provided chai in a deliverable format to offices, to homes, etc. Just that one flask, right? That flask that's very popular today. Just that one flask, right? So I think that innovation in India, especially where food and beverage is concerned, huge.
Absolutely. And I think what you rightly said is about that technology as an enabler also has fueled this particular thing. Specifically, I was just reading recently about Swiggy. At one point in time, when they were not able to bring more revenue generated, they started focusing on second tier cities.
Yeah.
So the way they actually saw is that they used the thing called the washing machine model. So washing machine model, or what they refer to that, is that they say which part of India was buying more washing machines.
Yeah.
So that means that particular area actually were having people who valued time over than spending that much time in washing their clothes. So automated washing and drying for them meant that they have more spare time and more disposable income. And when those targeted cities were actually approached by Swiggy was able to grow proportionately in those tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So that's a very interesting thing. And like you rightly spoke about, not just about India as an example, I would say that recently also there is this particular company based out of Dubai that does this very famous called Dubai viral chocolate, right? So the name of the company is called Fixed Desert, right? And they are an e-com first kind of a company approach. They don't have like physical stores much to what I know.
Are they the company that started the pistachio?
Exactly,
Okay.
Kunafa pistachio thing.
Kunafa, okay.
So now that popularity has grown so much that the Crown Prince of Dubai actually managed to, or rather they managed to do a collab with him. So the product went so viral that even companies like Lin and so many other very big companies are emulating the same product and trying to use the tag called Dubai viral chocolate, despite the fact I don't know how much of effort these guys went into patenting that particular name or whatever. But from Dubai, rest of the world, now everyone is talking about that particular product, and truly I think it has become a global scale economy of F&B opportunities and space for business to grow and develop.
Yeah, I think, and you raised a very valid point, Ali sir, because many times, when things like this pop up in the food and beverage scene, people ask me, oh, do you think this is here to stay, or do you think this is a fad? And that's really a $1 million question, because, today, even if you look at us as a company, right, I always, whenever people ask, I ask my guys, who is our customer today, right? And the most important word in that question is today. A brand has to evolve along with the customer base, right? And I think that many of the people in India, right, are evolving at a very rapid pace.
Okay.
Right? Today, when we look at it, I will look at one of our brands and say, okay, this is our customer base today, and this is what we need to be doing now, right? So that doesn't mean that I've perfected the marketing strategy, I've perfected the operational strategy, I've perfected pricing strategy, nothing. Everything I now know is temporary, right? I think what COVID has really taught us as a company is that we don't really look at 5-year projections anymore. Okay, we look at immediate short-term goals. Of course, there is a larger long-term goal that we have, but that larger long-term goal should be reached by meeting these quick, short-term, efficient goals, right? And these goals keep changing.
Okay.
So when people ask me, for example, people ask me, is this Dubai pistachio kunafa chocolate going to be a fad? And I said, I don't know if it's going to be a fad, but this is what consumers want now. And this is what consumers are going to consume for the next 3 to 4 months. And I think that what's really changed is big brands, like you said, are also wanting to tap in on this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right? They are saying, okay, we can't just think, oh, well, this is too small of a market for us. I think that if it's a $100,000 market, everybody wants to be in that $100,000 market and capture enough market share. And the reason I think that's there is because you are acquiring new customers, right? You're acquiring new customers, and what happens is that your customer acquisition cost, your CAC during that particular period may be very high, right? But you have to look at customer acquisition cost on such marketing periods or such short-term periods as an investment into your brand. Right?
Absolutely.
So that you are getting, and then if you say get 100 new customers, in those 100 new customers, we're able to convert 10 customers to your overall bigger brand, right? Where they really appreciate the other gamut of products you have to offer. I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Absolutely. And when you rightly said, certain things that what is not working outside the country are working excellently over here.
Exactly.
A good example is your quick commerce.
Exactly. Yeah.
America, when I spoke about quick commerce to my friends, they're like shocked. What do you mean that, you're able to get things at home at 10 minutes,
Exactly.
5 minutes? So even developed countries are finding it shocking that economy like with India, which is very densely populated and has challenges in terms of infrastructure for quick commuting and the product reaching across. I myself personally am actually shocked. In fact, I did an experimentation where actually there is a Zepto store just bang opposite my house, and on next to my house is actually a small kirana shop. By the time the kirana shop come and deliver, the Zepto guy actually crosses the median, does a half a kilometer turnaround, comes and delivers it much faster than the guy who's just sitting in my gate.